if you didn't get the memo, it's because they've been soft pedaling their religious agenda for this long. The enclosed creationists are end times believers. They're end time prophets. They have an end times Bible prophecy. And I'm not making this up. I'm just stating the facts for you to know. Do you want to be involved with a heavily, I would say, no, I don't want to say infiltrated. I say from the beginning because it's so deceptive. Listen, um, they would have come out right in front and said, "There's a dome, and that MF's going to fall on us. Let's start praying right now." They would have just jumped out with it if they didn't think it would have scared 99% of the people away. The first time I heard even the phrase flat Earth, I immediately pictured in my mind a group of people in Kansas somewhere praying in their Bible, just totally backwards. Westboro Baptist Church, a little cult. That's exactly what came to my mind because it's very off putting if you recognize how evil religion is. It's very off putting when somebody has a religious agenda and they're trying to push it on you. How many times have you slammed the door in the face of a Jehovah's Witness? So, what if the Jehovah's Witness came over with something else? Maybe just a friendly invitation to a barbecue, and then they hit you with it. That's kind of how this is. It's very disingenuous. They're leading with, they're soft pedaling it. Oh, it's just the enclosed world. Like, look, delves into the possibility that our human civilization is actually inside a Truman-like enclosed system. Okay, there's two problems with this. One, it's just a cover for enclosed creationism, and it's disingenuous. I asked him myself, he believes. He's a believer in Bible prophecy. And two, the Truman Show was not about an enclosed world. It was about a guy being lied to about the size and scope of the world, but he was able to leave. There was more land. The idea to the Truman Show was that the Truman Show was to put him in a small area, to shrink his world, which it did. It wasn't about him remaining in there and then finding out, oh, look, I'm in a cage. No, it was about him finding out everybody's lying, I'm getting the hell out, which is what he did. But in the enclosed creationist model, there is no escape. There is no escape. There's a barrier, as Mark Sargent told that kid at the conference. Oh, you can't go anywhere, there's a barrier. How do you know there's a barrier? The Bible? Why don't you just come out and say it? Because and look, even among the people who go to the conference, very few know that the leaders of this thing are all into Skyfall. Look up Skyfall 2018. Skyfall 2018 says that, and it's from the prophet Isaiah, the prophet this, the prophet that, the sky is going to fall and crush the non-believers. And I think it's a joke. I think it's laughable. When I was being stalked by that group, The Collective, they used to tell me, they used to say, your path to salvation has been removed and the firmament's going to fall on your head. Like they've been threatening me with the firmament falling on my head for months. So when I heard that the conference organizers believe this stuff, I'm just like, what? Where did that come from? So if you didn't know, if they didn't bother to tell you, I guess you're just supposed to figure it out the hard way like the rest of us. You might want to ask them though. Can you tell us about the sky falling? Okay, let's move on. If we can agree on anything anymore, and this is the New Yorker, it's that we live in a post-truth era. Facts are no longer correct or incorrect. Everything is potentially true unless it's disagreeable, in which it's fake. Recently, Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes said, after the 2016 election, that Trump told her the reason he maligns the press is, quote, to discredit you and demean you all, so when you write negative stories, no one will believe you. That's why I actually voted for Trump. I'm not a believer in the system, but I voted for Trump because, well, one, the nationalist ticket was definitely opposed to globalism, which is where the other side is going, and at least he's not a believer in global warming. He called it a Chinese hoax. Whether or not that's the case, it's definitely a commie hoax. And then, moreover, he went after the media like this, which needs to be done. The media as an institution needs to be challenged, refuted, made obsolete. Goes on to say the flat earth is the post-truth landscape. As a group, its residents view themselves as staunch empiricists, their eyes wide open. The plain truth, as they say, can be grasped in experiments you can do at home. Goes on to talk about the different ways that people, like the spirit level on the plane, come to believe these things. Now, what this article doesn't do is it doesn't refute any of these things. It just talks about these are the reasons why people believe these things. It says the modern case for a flat Earth derives from Zetetic Astronomy, Earth Not a Globe, published in 1865. Now, this is also a good point because the flat Earth movement was not created in 2015. Maybe that's when it, like every other idea, every fringe idea, found a platform in YouTube, flat Earth included. Whoever uploaded it first or popularized it first didn't invent it. I see a lot of people ignoring the Flat Earth Society or any other groups that at least maintain this discussion. It wasn't like it was totally omitted. There were still maps. I mean, anyway, my point is this. The modern iteration of this thing, this movement on the internet, is just a continuation of an ongoing, there's been an ongoing resistance to what the astronomers, government astronomers, and scientists have been saying for quite some time. 100 years ago, there was a guy putting up billboards challenging the astronomers of the day, saying the Earth was flat or that the stars were not that far away. A modern case for a flat Earth derives from this book, 1865, Robotham. Goes on to say that I found a copy at the conference alongside Revelations and New Testament Apocrypha. Again, this is my issue with the biblical literalists. They're idolaters, and two, they reference Apocrypha. You can't be a biblical literalist and then grab stuff from outside of the Bible. Doesn't work. Says the vendor, a friendly woman who looked to be in her late 60s, offered her thoughts on the Earth's flatness and the enshrouding secrecy. I moved on when she got to the Jews. Yeah, that's something else too. The religious agenda behind the flat Earth enclosed creationist model is inherently anti-Semitic. Not in the PC way, but like they do view Jews as the serpent seed, as Satan's body collectively. Like if Christians are collectively the body of Christ, well, the Jews are Satan. This is this is just a product of their religion, but it's also a convenient scapegoat. So yeah, their religion does have a scapegoat, but now it's the Jews who gave you the globe deception. The Jews are hiding the flat Earth. They won't say that, just like they won't tell you that they believe the sky is going to fall. They won't say these things because it's not politically correct, but they believe it. If you dig, I mean, one of the first groups I encountered when I first started talking about the subject, I was being stalked by Christian Nazis. Now, I never had any issues with Christians before. I was raised Catholic. I grew up around Mormons. I mean, I was always around religious nutcases, but it wasn't until I started talking about this, and I was just talking about the space program. And my very first stalkers were just these wide-eyed, wild Christian Nazis. Like, why don't you ever talk about the Jews, the Jews, the Jews? And it's like, what about them? To me, this is about the infrastructure of a system of control and manipulation, a system of an elite class creating a slave class through the mediation of their priest class. Has nothing to do with any specific genetics, and it doesn't have to do with the Jews or whatever, but that's what the religious flat earthers believe. So, if you don't have a religious agenda, if you want to be objective, if you're not looking for a convenient scapegoat, which, by the way, is a very well-known limited hangout tactic. I mean, they've been doing this forever. Just dangle out this one, especially because, like the New Yorker, he moved on when she got to the Jews. The idea that you have this universal scapegoat has been discredited by too many, or for so many, that you're not going to convince someone that it is the Jews, and even if you are able to, like most of the biblical flat earthers believe, what does that lead to? Are you talking about, do flat earthers have to round up the Jews? I've always wondered this one. What's their end game? And here's their end game. And I know what it is because I've listened to them. Their end game is Christ is going to come back and punish the non believers. And the believers will be ascended and they will be given immortal, spiritualized light bodies. And they'll come down, slay God's enemies, and rebuild the world for some kind of a golden age. That's their story. Skyfall. Skyfall 2018 is when the dome falls on us. And again, they didn't tell you because if they were open about this, you wouldn't want to be a part of it. Now, when I say they, the organizers, I mean, and I'm not naming names, but I'm just letting you know, the very people behind the International Flat Earth Conference, the very people who want to be the face of this idea to the media, have a religious agenda. And they're easily ignored by the media because if you dig enough, you find ridiculous stuff like the sky is falling and we got to do something about the Jews. Like, I'm sorry, but it's not a good sell. Even if it's true, it's not a good sell. And also, you don't know. We don't know. We really don't. And for saying I don't know, the believers, like the Christian Nazis, will say, oh, well, he must be a Jew defending the Jews. It's like, nope. If anybody needs to defend something, it's you who believe in a dome. What's the curvature of the sky? Is it 8 inches per mile squared? Is the dome higher at the top? What's it made out of? How far south does it go? Is there more land? They have this idea that we're in this perfectly enclosed system that extends just beyond Antarctica, and they've ruled out the possibility of other lands. In fact, one of my other stalkers, not my main, I'll say number 5 out of my top 10 stalkers. My fifth one is human sheeple. Now, human sheeple is this strange guy, lives in Cyprus, and he's been stalking me for more than a year, convinced that I'm a Jew, right? He says that I'm a Jew, and he's convinced that it's even worse. I hardly want to say it. But anyway, he's considered to be he's like a well-known, respected person in the flat Earth community. But we're talking, this guy's hunting me online because he thinks I'm a Jew. It's not a good look for this whole flat Earth idea. We have these weird Christian extremists. But anyway, I bring up this guy because he's respected, well known. He attends the big experiments, and it's like, you know what? The longer this goes on with all these people doing experiments, the worse it's going to look. Because there are no experiments you can do from within the model that will debunk it in the eyes of those who believe in it. Because you're dealing with believers, not knowers. You could do look, we have 500 miles. 500-mile with infrared camera visual confirmation of peaks in Colorado from 31,000 feet. Impossible on the globe. The globe has been refuted, yet nothing's changed. Why is that? It's because that you're dealing with believers. You could say that the claims of Christianity have been refuted, yet you have billions of believers. The claims of all the major world religions have been refuted, or they've never been demonstrated to be true in the first place. And yet, they continue. And that's the nature of believers. Okay, sorry for that. I had a bit of a sound issue for a second. We're looking at Samuel Rowbotham. This is from the New Yorker. And his experiment, this was a 6-mile long experiment. Well, 6 miles. And this was in a canal, the Bedford level. He demonstrated no curve. And that in itself, should have been, okay, slam dunk. Especially if the experiment's repeatable. And it has been. It's been done in other places.